Scorpio, the week of August 3rd to August 8th, 2026, brings a real wound about commitment to the surface. Right as the sky also supports building something sustainable out of last week's career high. Chiron stations retrograde on August 3rd at 0 degrees Taurus, settling into your 7th house of partnerships, opening honest introspection about an old fear or pattern around commitment. On August 6th, the Sun forms a supportive trine to Saturn, connecting your 10th house of career to your 6th house of daily work and health. Venus enters Libra the same day, landing in your 12th house of rest and the subconscious, while Mars continues through Gemini, still sitting in your 8th house of intimacy and transformation. After last week's genuine career recognition and the full moon pulling you toward home, this week's focus shifts inward, toward the deeper patterns underneath both success and closeness. It's a quieter week on the surface, but the questions it raises run deeper than last week's more visible external drama. Let's go through what all of this actually means for your money, your relationships, and your energy, using the real sky, not generic guesswork. Money and career benefit this week from the Sun's trine to Saturn, connecting your career house to your house of daily work and routine. This is a genuinely favorable aspect for building sustainable structure around the recognition you gained last week, rather than another flashy moment. This week rewards the unglamorous discipline that actually makes success last. Scorpio can sometimes treat a big professional win as proof of power that speaks for itself, without the ongoing maintenance that keeps it solid. Saturn's involvement here is a reminder that reputation, once earned, still needs tending rather than simply being assumed to hold, especially in a culture that moves on to the next thing quickly and forgets last month's achievement without regular reinforcement. Mercury in Cancer continues to sit in your 9th house of beliefs and travel, keeping your bigger picture thinking clear this week, supporting any planning connected to further learning or a trip tied to your professional growth. If a decision about further education or expanding your expertise has been sitting unresolved, this week's continued mental clarity supports actually moving it forward rather than letting it remain theoretical. Early in the week, while the moon moves through earlier signs before Chiron's theme fully settles in, use the calmer opening days to handle any concrete administrative task tied to last week's professional momentum, before the deeper emotional weight of the week's other transits demands more of your attention. Relationships carry the real weight of the week. Since Chiron's retrograde station lands directly in your 7th house of partnerships, this asks you to look honestly at an old wound around commitment, a fear of being controlled, betrayed, or losing yourself in closeness that may date back further than your current relationship actually warrants. Scorpio guards vulnerability carefully, often testing a partner's loyalty before ever fully trusting it. This retrograde period, lasting until January, invites you to notice that testing pattern rather than automatically repeating it. A station presses harder than an ordinary transit, so this particular week may bring the pattern into sharper focus than usual, even if nothing external has actually happened to justify heightened suspicion. Mars in your 8th house continues to give real intensity to close connections, which this week can either deepen genuine trust or amplify the very fear Chiron is asking you to examine, depending on how honestly you engage with what surfaces. If a partner does something small that triggers an outsized reaction this week, consider whether the reaction is proportionate to the actual event, or whether it's connected to something older that the current moment simply resembles, rather than something the partner has actually earned in this specific instance. If you're single, this week's Chiron activation may surface a pattern in how you choose partners, worth noticing before repeating it in a new connection, particularly whether you're drawn to people who confirm your existing fears about closeness, rather than people who might actually challenge them in a good way. There's no need to overhaul how you approach relationships in a single week. Simply noticing the pattern honestly without immediately judging it is genuinely the more productive move available to you right now. Energy and health this week benefit from a quieter, more private thread through Venus's move into Libra, landing in your 12th house of rest and the subconscious. This favors solitary restoration over social pleasure, a quiet evening, a private ritual of self-care rather than an outward social event. Scorpio can push through fatigue in the name of staying formidable, and Venus in this house gently pushes back against that instinct, favoring softness and beauty experienced privately rather than displayed publicly, which is a genuinely different kind of strength than the one you usually reach for. The Sun-Saturn trine adds real support for actual physical discipline too. A good day to commit to a health routine that supports the momentum you built last week, something structured and sustainable, rather than another burst of intensity that fades once the initial motivation does. Given that Chiron's partnership wound and Mars's intensity in your 8th house are both active this week, your body may register more emotional tension than usual, even without an obvious external cause. Treat unexplained fatigue or irritability this week as information about the deeper material surfacing, rather than something to simply push through or ignore. Since your usual strategy of powering past discomfort is likely to work less well than it normally does this particular week, there's a shorter note about the broader picture still unfolding. The lunar nodes remain on the Aquarius-Leo axis, with the North Node in your 4th house of home and family, and the South Node in your 10th house of career and public achievement. Your growth edge over the coming months continues to lie in genuine emotional rootedness at home, rather than the more familiar pull toward public accomplishment. This week's Chiron activation and partnerships and this ongoing nodal theme are actually pointing at closely related territory. Both are asking whether you're willing to be genuinely known by someone, at home and in a close relationship, rather than simply respected and formidable in the wider world. Scorpio can find real safety in being powerful and slightly unknowable, and both this week's specific transits and the broader nodal chapter are gently pressing on that same protective instinct from two different angles, which is worth noticing rather than dismissing as coincidence when multiple parts of the sky converge on the same theme in a single week. It tends to be worth taking seriously. This week doesn't bring a new nodal event, but it continues shaping the background of everything else happening right now. If this reading resonated with you, hit like and subscribe. And let me know in the comments whether this week's Chiron theme around commitment feels familiar to you right now.